get started right now, I want to welcome you all here to this iReady training to learn how to get things started with the iReady system. This is Chris Burgess, not to be confused with Dave Burgess, the pirate guy.
Yeah,
although,
not a pirate.
do you have any pirate tendencies?
I do not.
Okay, well this is a good thing. So Mr. Burgess will be our trainer now and again in September when we talk about what to do with all the data we collect at the beginning of the school year. So I'm just turning it over to him and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much, Ray. Well, welcome. I'm excited to be here. I actually live in Winsville, so I'm not too far from you guys. And like she had mentioned, I will be back in September to do your understanding data portion of this. So we'll be back together once the school year begins and everything like that. So I do have to say I'm a little jealous. You guys are already done. My girls aren't done until next Thursday. So they're probably more jealous than I am because we go a little bit longer. But at any rate, our purpose today is to really understand what the assessment does, not just for you, but also for your students, and then what to do once the assessment is given. With regard to the training materials, you would normally have a real looking book, and I do apologize for that piece. But we have new training materials that we're coming out with, so I kind of got the in-between side. And so that's why when I come back in September, you'll have an actual teacher training guide that'll look a little bit more official than some copied pages. So keep that in mind. But feel free to take. But I gave you some additional note pages to take notes on because I wasn't sure that there would be enough to write in the margins. You have sticky notes to mark pages. You also have sticky notes there as well. So please feel free to mark it up and do what you need to with regard to that piece. You have two logins that we're going to use today. That's what the stickers on the top represent. One, you will actually be taking the assessment, and the other one will be to look at data, made up data, but data all the same, for the purposes of understanding what you have once the assessment is given. So if you have any questions, please feel free to throw those questions out at me. That's the whole reason we're here today. So please feel free to stop me at any point, ask those questions, things like that, and we'll go forward from there. So your training guide, like I said, that's what you have in front of you there. By the end, you're going to be able to administer this diagnostic, okay, to ensure reliable results. And this is a very important piece here. Your first diagnostic is really your baseline data for the entire year. When we're going to talk about growth and things like that, it's all based off that first diagnostic, okay? So it's really, really important that your students are taking their time, they're doing their best, those kind of things, those best practices that you think about. Now, having taught middle school, I also realize that that's a little bit easier said than done. I also have little ones at home, so again, I have a first grader, a third grader, and a going to be kindergartner. Easier said than done. I do understand that. So with regard to that piece, understand that, you know, again, this drives everything in the system. It's going to drive your data. It's going to drive how you're creating small groups, things like that. So it's really important that you're honing in and explaining to them to do their best, to not rush those kind of things. And then we're going to talk about how to incorporate that data and tools into your classroom practices. Once you have the data, what does it mean for you insofar as where your students are, how much growth should they be making, how do you use that data to then inform your instruction, both whole group and small group, those type of things. We're going to talk about how iReady does that for you as well. So our agenda, we're just going to understand it first. What is it? What does it do? How does it work? Those kind of things. We're going to get into how it supports you as teachers, and then also how to get the most from the diagnostic. What does it look like? What does all this data stuff mean? What are my important reports? Those kind of things. And then we're going to look ahead to what else is there. You'll have automatic differentiated instruction that's built into it based on their diagnostic results. We're also going to talk about what happens after the diagnostic is given. How do you use it in between diagnostics? What else is available? What are some other growth pieces that are built in? Those kinds of things as well. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to think about this question. We're going to do a little activity around this. But when you think about differentiation, okay, and differentiating instruction more effectively for your students, what are some things that you feel that you need to do that effectively? Okay? So I want you to think about that for just a moment. Have some think time. But then I want you to share with the person next to you or behind you or whatever you may have, what are some things that you need to effectively differentiate within your classroom? I'll give you a minute or so to do that, and then we'll share out in just a moment.
What do you think? What do you think? You need the data. Is that what he's talking about? The different things to find out what you need specifically to differentiate your lessons.
But he doesn't really have a good diagnostic both region and courses right now.
Yeah, time's a biggie. Do you need to go take her to the doctor? Oh, Amanda. What? So it's in the...
So, anybody want to share out what you talked about within your group? What are some things that you think that would help with effective differentiation? Her discussion. Got to get you guys talking this morning. Come on, I know it's early.
Well, you have to really drill down and see what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Okay, so being able to effectively drill down to their level, understand where they are. What grade level do you teach?
I'm an administrator at the K2 building.
Okay. So let's say you have a second grader that you know may be at more of a first grade level or end of or kindergarten level. So what does that look like? What does that mean? Those kind of things. What else?
How they learn this.
How they learn. So specifically where they are, but more specifically, what is maybe getting in their way, or what are they really good at and what are they struggling at? Those type of things. Absolutely. What else?
You need a lot of different materials to reach all those different
So
spans.
it's great to say that I may have a fourth grader at a second grade level, but if I don't have the things to meet them at their area of need, it's kind of a moot point, because Google is great for certain things, not necessarily for everything. So what does that look like and what does that mean? Absolutely. Time. Being able to say that I want to do it is great, and even having the materials is awesome, but sometimes finding the time to fit it in. So what does that look like and how do I get that time back? We're going to talk about all those pieces and how iReady helps to meet those things, meet those requirements that you're looking for. One thing I'll say as well, since you spoke up and I appreciate it, there is actually, I talked with Mary earlier about having an administrator's training to look at those pieces from your standpoint also. So we're going to work on blending that in September probably when I come back. All right, so what is iReady? When we talk about differentiation, we talk about wanting to meet our students at where they are, iReady really does that in a very effective way. The first piece that we're going to look at is the diagnostic. Okay, the diagnostic is a fully K-12 adaptive assessment that helps you to see and helps you to meet your students at the level they're at based on their information. So when I say that it meets their needs down to the sub-skill, it's not just going to give you a generic, my kid can't read, or my kid can't do math, because duh. I mean, we know what that part. What we want to know specifically is why and how. Why are they where they're at, and how do I meet them at where they're at? Being able to drill down to those sub-skill levels, you're going to specifically know my student is struggling in comprehension at a grade level below, and specifically in comprehension, they're struggling with character analysis, or they're struggling with cause and effect, those type of things, okay? Once we give that diagnostic then, you're then given instruction at their level based on how they performed on the diagnostic. Same thing with math. If they're struggling in number and operations, or they're struggling with algebra and algebraic thinking, specifically what does that mean? Is it counting forward and counting backward? Is it adding multi-digit numbers? Is it a multiplication issue? All right. So what exactly specifically is getting in the way? We provide instruction not just to inform your whole class, but also to inform your small group instruction as well. You're given what we call tools for instruction, which are specific to the student or the small group, specific to the sub-skill and the grade level that student is struggling at. Okay? So you have materials that are specific to those students based on how they perform on the diagnostic, which is why that first diagnostic is so important, because all this information is geared off of that diagnostic. Now, each time they give a diagnostic, generally you give it 3 times a year, beginning, middle, end, this information will change. You know, if the student is making growth, then hopefully you see that on that next diagnostic, and the information, the instruction will change based on how they perform on that next assessment piece. Then, on top of the teacher-led instruction that you're giving, you also have online differentiated instruction that meet the students at the various needs they are. They are at. I should finish that sentence. What I mean by that is, in reading, they're assessed in 5 different areas. Okay, so you have phonics, phonological awareness, and high-frequency words. Those are your main sub-skills that are assessed. Okay, those are also grade level specific. We'll talk about those in just a moment. Then they're assessed in vocabulary and comprehension. In math, you have number and operations and algebra and algebraic thinking. Those are your foundational skills. Then they're assessed in measurement and data and geometry. Based on how they perform in each one of those domains, they are given differentiated instruction online at the grade level they're at in all those areas. Because as we know, my kid might be knocking it out of the park in vocabulary and sight words, because that's our focus really in K2. But when it comes to other areas like nonfiction comprehension, maybe they're a grade level below. Maybe they're struggling in another area. Maybe in math, they're great with the number sense, but the application of the number sense is where they're falling behind. They're going to be given instruction based on that online that they can access either when they're in school as like maybe a math center or a reading center, or they can also access it at home if they have Wi-Fi access, because it's all based online. Okay, so just some things to think about. This is then how we what we call our cube, our learning cube, because at the end then you're also given monitoring throughout the process. So you have your big diagnostic that happens 3 times a year. In between each diagnostic on a regular monthly basis, you can give what we call our growth monitoring assessment, progress monitoring, which allows you to see, is my student making growth throughout each month in between diagnostics. And then on a daily and weekly basis, you have a response to instruction report. And that response to instruction report lets you know how are they performing on the online instruction. If they're failing lessons, specifically what lesson have they failed and what was it teaching them, so that you can go in and monitor and assist based on that information as well. So you really have more regular data than you probably ever had or wanted before. Because you have not only daily and weekly, but you have monthly, and you have basically bi-monthly, tri-monthly data as well. So, you know, when your principal does come to you, or an instructional leader, whatever it may be, and says, you know, Chris was really struggling in September, how is he doing now that we're almost in November, what's going on? You can pull up your iReady data and say, here's what he's done, here's what I'm doing with him, here's what we've been working toward, here's how he's doing on that online instruction, and here's what we're going to be doing this month or this quarter or whatever it is. So you have regular assessment, regular data that's available to you through iReady all of the time. Okay? So when we talk about an adaptive assessment, what does that mean exactly? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a real quick activity. You're going to partner up. We have enough pairs in here. Partner A, you're going to pick a number between 1 and 100. Partner B has to try and guess what that number is. And all you can say, partner A, all you can say is higher or lower. That's it. Okay? So we're going to do this for about a minute, then we're going to come back together. Go ahead and do that.
We have to write it down? All right. I guess I thought you're right. Yeah, I got it. I don't have to write it down, boys.
Yeah, I'm not cheating. It's 5th grade, man.
This pen doesn't work.
Pick.
30.
No, what am I supposed to
Higher or
say?
lower?
Oh, lower. All right, got one.
60.
I'm good at this.
Lower.
733.
Lower.
Oh, 56.
Yes. That's called nonverbal communication. You could see that it
All
was
right.
really
So
close.
the purpose of this activity is to kind of give you an idea of what the diagnostic does for you. It's really kind of, and I hate to word it this way, I guess, but it's really playing a guessing game with how your students are answering those questions, okay? Because as an adaptive assessment goes, all students are going to start out on grade level with a grade level question. Based on how they respond to that question then, it begins to adapt up or down to try and basically guess where is that student as it relates to their learning until it comes to an actual performance level. That level may not necessarily be on the student's grade level. It may be above, it may be below, or it might be right where we want them to be. But it's basically the same thing that you guys just did with that number activity. It's trying to guess, trying to figure out based on the student responses, where is that student? What I can say about the adaptive assessment, because I always get kind of that, well, is it guessing? What is it doing? We have research basically based on just the diagnostic alone that shows its reliability and its accuracy. We did a study with over 100,000 iReady students across the nation, K-12, and the accuracy is about 0.85 to how they would perform at the end of the year on the math test. So, you know, we're usually pretty happy with about a 0.6, 0.55, somewhere in there. So the reliability and the accuracy and the validity of the assessment based on this, we're pretty confident that we're giving you good, reliable data and not just throwing some numbers at you to make you guys happy, okay? But that's also why it's really, really important that your students are taking their time on this assessment. Because in order for it to be valid, they can't just be happy clickers. And that's really important to understand. And again, sometimes easier said than done, especially depending on your grade level. You know, but doing their best is what's going to give you the most reliable data. And we do that in both reading as well as math. Now I want to talk about reading for just a quick second, because reading in the foundational skills area is grade level specific. So where's my K2 folks? Okay. Your students will see all of the foundational skills in reading. My second grade folks, except for phonological awareness, unless it adapts down to that level. Okay? So phonological awareness is assessed grades K and 1. Phonics is K4. High frequency is K3. So the reason I point that out is, any fourth grade teachers? Fifth? Okay. Fifth grade, your students are actually going to start here and adapt up or down from there. Okay? So if I have a fifth grade student, but they're struggling a little bit in vocabulary, it's going to adapt down and they're going to see some phonics questions. Because if they're struggling with tier 2, tier 3 level vocabulary where it's really context level, where it might be multi-meaning words or those Greek and Latin roots, things like that they really didn't master before they got to you, we need to find out where they're struggling. So we're going to eventually adapt down to that level to see what the issue is. If it's a prefix suffix issue or if it's another issue on top of that. Fourth grade actually starts in phonics and works up or down from there. Okay? Everyone K-12 will see vocabulary and comprehension, both fiction as well as nonfiction. Okay? K and 1, you're going to see all 6 because this is assessed K and 1. Second grade will actually start in high frequency words and then go into phonics and then vocabulary. Okay? That makes sense because sometimes I can get kind of sticky. When you take the actual assessment today, you'll kind of see how that works if you choose reading over math. In math, these are all assessed K-12, so there's no like I only see some or not or none. It's going to start number and operations. It goes into algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, and then geometry is the last domain that's assessed. Okay. Questions? All right. So when you're looking at your calendar, now whenever you see a star up here, that represents a page number in your training guide. So if you want to follow along, this is just kind of a mock-up of what your year may look like. Just to kind of give you a big picture overview of what is my iReady year going to kind of look like and be like. So at the beginning of the year, which is really now, you guys are getting your beginning year PD at the end, which is fine. It's actually perfect because then you can just hit the ground running. But you're going to get your PD, that's me, and you're going to start, this should actually probably be August, because I'm assuming you'll probably give the first diagnostic sometime in August. Okay? Once they've taken that information, you get your diagnostic information. I'm going to come back and we're going to do another training. It's called Understanding Data. Okay? Today you're going to look at a triad account, which gives you basically fake data to look at. But later on, you'll have your own data once your students have taken that diagnostic. Okay? Once they've taken that diagnostic, then we generally say about 12 to 18 weeks in between diagnostics before you give another one. So if you give it in August, that gives you September, October. You'll probably give it again either end of November or right before winter break. And then when you come back, you'll have fresh data to look at. Okay? But you can see in between there, you have your online student-led instruction, as well as your teacher-led instruction through those 12 to 18 weeks. And you're monitoring using that growth monitoring assessment piece. What does that look like? We're going to talk a little bit more about the growth monitoring, but basically it's just a mini assessment to see, is my student making growth or not in between diagnostics on a monthly basis. Where are my SPED folks? Okay, so you guys have the option if you need to give it more often, because I know Missouri sometimes requires more regular data points. You could give it every 2 weeks if you wanted to. We just want to make sure you have enough time in between each piece to have some instruction that's given as well. So you guys can make that determination if we want to give it every 2 weeks or every month. It's up to you. But you could give it more often. We don't generally recommend more often than every 2 weeks though, because that's just not enough time for the teacher to get in there and really work with that kiddo. All right. We also have what we call levers for success. Now, when I'm talking to you guys, really where we're focusing today are going to be in these three. Assess for success, doing more with data, and integrating the instruction. And really where we're focused today is assessing and integrating. Because what we want to do is we need to understand where our kids are and then understand how we can instruct based on those levels to get them to where we want to be. So when we're talking about levers for success, this is not only success for you, but it's success for your students. What does that mean? What does it look like? How can I do more and be more effective with my students based on the information that I now have ready at my fingertips? Okay? So I want you to think, before we take the assessment, I want you to think of a student. We're going to do a little activity, and this is actually on page 9 of your training guide. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to do an activity called Picture This. Before we begin, I want you to think of a student that you had in your classroom this year, that you worked with this year. Okay? I just want you to think about that student for a minute. I want you to reflect on what it was for that student that maybe made you want to pull your hair out sometimes. That maybe you struggled with understanding what it was that was getting in their way. Just one student. I see people laughing. But what was it that caused some struggles for that kiddo? Maybe it was struggles for you and for that kiddo. Okay, I want you to think about what was it about that student? How would you describe that student to someone else? And then I want you to think of some barriers or challenges that maybe caused that student to struggle. Maybe you were hoping that they would be in a different place by the end of the year and he wasn't quite where you thought he or she would be. Okay? And then we're going to talk about some needs and wants. What were some things that you wanted to do or needed in order to get that student into a happier place? What would have been ideal to move that student to being where they wanted to be? Maybe they were a grade level below and you knew that going into the year and you really wanted them to be on grade level by the end, but they didn't quite make it. Okay? So I'm going to give you some time. Think about that student, get a really good idea of having that student. This is perfect since you guys just ended your school year. And then think about what are some barriers and challenges and what are some wants and needs for that student, either that you wanted or needed to get them to their happy place or moving on through next year. Give you some time to do that, and then if anybody wants to shout, okay.
I got
This
it.
one. Well, it didn't work for me. Go figure. You saw me trying to use it.
Did you find one? Either way. Yeah, no worries.
That's what my first one when you pulled that up. It's like, that's what I was going to say.
Take about 1 more minute. I'm going to push you guys outside your comfort zone a little bit, but is there anybody who wants to share out what they have on your picture of this activity? You don't have to if you don't want to. I just thought I'd ask. Yeah.
I had a little guy who had a major speech problem,
Okay.
so that always interferes with how you hear and say and produce sounds, much less
Yeah.
read them back. He was finally in a position where he was getting some support at home about mid-year, but that was caused another change. I mean, it was a positive change in that he got more help at home, but still it's a change. Some definite attention issues and some impulsivity. So he basically needs some really focused practice on those holes that are missing, which is hard enough to do when you're right there with him.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, absolutely. What grade level? I'm just curious.
Kindergarten.
Okay. So, lots of holes, but at the age that they're at, sometimes it's easier to fill those holes, if you will, because you're working on them on a more regular basis than, say, if that student was a 5th grader and you're like, wow, we've got caverns now. That's awesome. So, you know, that's always a struggle, especially when they're more aware of the situation as they get older, too. So, excellent. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? All right. Well, what I want you to do is I want you to keep that person, that student in your mind as we go through today, and really think about that student as it relates to the iReady data that you're going to see today and the assessment that you're going to see. Because hopefully you can see, my goal for you is to see how iReady will help that student to meet those needs more effectively and individually, as well as with you throughout the next year as they move on. Okay? So how does iReady help to support you? Well, we have what we call our 3 key reports. We're going to look a little bit deeper at these reports today, but I just want to kind of give you an idea or a snapshot of what they're going to look like as we're moving forward today. Our first one that you're going to look at is going to be your class report. And what your class report does is it's going to give you a whole big picture idea of how did my whole class perform on the diagnostic, where are the holes and gaps, where are the areas that I need to concentrate as we work in small group, things like that, where are the places that I can push some kiddos forward, where are the kids that maybe surprised me, I didn't realize they would be there, but they're a lot higher, maybe a little bit lower than I thought they would be, those type of things. Where is the biggest area of need, where's the highest or the lowest area of need, those type of things, okay? your class report will look very similar to this. You'll notice we all love our triangle. Okay, so we've leveled it from everything is defaulted from highest to lowest within our system, but we're going to talk about how you can adjust that information and you can change that information very quickly and very easily through a sorting feature. Okay. On top of that, then you also have what we call our instructional grouping profile. So we take all of this information here and we compile it into a report for you so that you can see right away where your students fall to create small groups. They're created for you. So it takes all 20 plus of your students that you have and it puts them into small groups for you based on their data, based on how they performed on the diagnostic. Okay? It will then tell you as well in a student report what they can do, where are they currently proficient, where do I need to begin instruction. So for my folks that work specifically with the special ed population, here you go. What are my goals? What are his IEP goals for this year? They're right here. And honestly, a lot of the time when I work specifically with special education folks, this is what they just copy and paste. What are my goals? Why reinvent the wheel when it's right here? We need to be adding multi-digit numbers. We need to learn to multiply 10 or a multiple of 10 by a one-digit number, and so on. I don't have to guess anymore. If you have that parent who's constantly like, well, what are you doing for my kid? I don't. Why aren't you working more? What are you doing for them? Right here. It really helps to alleviate a lot of those issues and those things because the report tells you exactly where to go, what to do. So I want to give you an opportunity to take a look at these things. On your training guide, on the front page of your training guide, you have this information on this tab right here. It's kind of full tab. But I'm going to log in with you and take a look at some of these reports with you as well. Once we do this, we'll take a short break and then we'll come back together. I'm going to actually have you take the assessment. Okay? But I want to show you what the assessment's going to provide for you as we're moving forward. So if you want to go ahead and log in, this is the site that you go to, training.i-ready.com, login CA, and then the username and password I'm going to give it to you right here.
I didn't push that either.
All right. All right, and then I will be logging in with you as well.
Put it in Safari. Hey, so we log this in, just we slide it. Hey, what? So we log it.
Yeah.
That'd be so creative.
I'm trying to get started here, girl.